So I wanted to talk real briefly with you guys before I log in to work in regards to the Umar Johnson space because I think there has been some really great conversation lately that's come up that could kind of leave this question up for interpretation. And based off of my experiences here and my opinions, I think it's kind of high time to even talk about whether or not the Umar Johnson sector has truly been a black space, and what that actually means. All right, so let's talk about that real quick.
It's Black Lounge Entertainment, and the time is right with T-Pre.
So grand rising, everybody. I hope everybody is doing great today. I really am doing pretty good. And I just wanted to talk briefly about this whole Umar Johnson sector being a black space kind of thing, okay? Because in all actuality, I've even called this a black space, but I'm not really sure, after kind of thinking about it and kind of going over it a little bit and thinking about how the history of this sector has been. I'm not sure if I really want to call this a black space, and I'll tell you guys why. Now, a lot of times, we tend to call something a black space when it's a bunch of black people kind of getting together. Okay. I mean, if that's what you want to call it, I guess you can say that. But in actuality, I don't know if this space has been very welcoming for black people in a sense. Okay. So in other words, has this space been helpful to black people? Has this space been something that is a building for black people? Has this space been something that has benefited black people? I don't really know if I would say the Umar Johnson sector is a space that has been beneficial for black people. This space has been very toxic. And it's been very toxic from the beginning. It started off in a toxic way where the AFW movement was going against a black man to begin with. Okay. Now, even though this black man was on some F shit at the time and possibly still on some F shit now, it doesn't matter. The point is, these people who were a group of a mixture of people. It wasn't just black people, but it was mostly black people, or at least the ones that were outspoken about it or that were talking about it. Those were the ones that were coming after Umar Johnson. And then came along a group called the Good Guys, who everybody knows the story, where the Good Guys and other people began to go against the AFWs. And so it was a back and forth between the Good Guys and the AFWs. And that's how that went until everything just kind of exploded all over the place and people just fell where they were. So now everybody's kind of where they are, and this space is kind of redeveloping itself because Umar is no longer a topic. The AFWs are no longer a topic. The Good Guys are no longer a topic. So now everybody is trying to kind of figure out where they stand and where they go. So I don't know if I could really say, and I'm just going to be very brief. I don't know if I could really say that the Umar Johnson sector is truly a black space or that this sector here is truly a black space because we are redefining this sector. We are redefining the movement of this sector, how this sector is going. And people are kind of moving in their own directions. So there's different content creators that do different things. For instance, we've got some new content creators like DJ Drama. Excuse me, guys, while my voice is kind of funny because of I got hay fever this morning. But anyway, such as DJ Drama, he is going to be doing the sector awards. So that's going to be something new, something fresh in the sector, and something fun. We've got LV, who's on deck with the Demon panel, and then he's got the Build panel. So there's different ways that this sector is moving, and I don't know if we can just say that this sector is just a black space, or that only black people are tuning in, or we're talking about black issues. There is a couple of people and a few content creators that you can pull from here and from there that are definitely touching on and talking about Black issues for sure. Okay. That is definitely a thing. We definitely see it and we definitely know it. But as a whole, I think the people that came together in this sector and got to know one another in this sector got to know each other under some very toxic some very toxic conditions and in a very toxic environment. So I don't want to call this a Black space because at the time, like what Carrie Ann was saying yesterday, and shout out to Carrie, what Carrie Ann was saying yesterday makes a lot of sense for what was happening in this sector a couple years ago. There was definitely a lot of trolls, and we could not tell who was who. We couldn't tell who was Black, who was white. We couldn't tell who was racist, and various things and so forth. That really started to spew out once the AFW started, kind of fighting against each other. That's really when we started to see a lot of the racist attacks and a lot of racist activity going on in this space. So for now, that really has settled itself out. A lot of that stuff has calmed down, with stuff that we have seen in the past. But what I can say is it does make sense to still keep paying attention to stuff like that. Because if we allow that kind of stuff to happen again, then where do we leave ourselves as content creators if we're going to direct this as a sector network in a sense, where in this sector we all support one another, we all go to each other's channels, and we all support each other and push each other out in the algorithm and so forth. If we're doing that, then okay, the only way that we can really take on a responsibility for who comes into this quote unquote space is if we all work together in doing that. And if everybody's not willing to do that, then I think it's kind of a waste of time and a waste of a conversation. But if everybody would be willing to do that as content creators, to watch what people are saying in their chats, watch what people are saying on their panels and so forth, then yes, then we can go ahead and make this a particular space and say, yes, this is a Black space, and this is where Black people convene, and this is where we talk, and this is where, we come to terms with things. Also, it would have to be positive, and it would have to always be positive. Now, there could be some times where we roast and so forth, but it couldn't be any disrespect, and it would have to be that way across the board if you're going to call this a sector and if you're going to call this a space, a Black space. If not, then you can only go on a case by case basis to each channel or each content creator, because each content creator, and let's just keep it real, I mean, what I just said in the latter was definitely a picture perfect beautiful scenery of a sector, okay? But at the end of the day, I cannot find a single sector like that on YouTube. Not one. And I don't know, maybe I'm just not floating out into the YouTube arena enough. But all I can say is all the spaces that I have been to where Black people tend to gather, and I'm not saying that it's a Black space, I'm just saying Black people tend to gather in these spaces. Whether or not it's a Black space or not, I can't say. But I can say that the majority of people that tend to go to certain particular channels, and this is channels, not sectors, are Black people. So if I tune into Conscious TV, for instance, most of the people that I'm associating with in his chat are Black people. If I go over to Tasha K, most of the people in her chat are Black people. If I go over to the Wiley Show, most of the people in his chat are Black people. But get this, if I go over to John Yates, who is a white guy in the T sector, there's a mixture of white and Black people in that chat. There's all kinds of white women up on the panel, all kinds of black people in the panel, all kinds of black people in the chat and white people in the chat. And that's just what it is, because that's the content that he creates, and that's the people that come to his audience. Okay. If I go over to So Debonair, again, more black women than there is anybody else. But it's not that there aren't white people in his chat. You understand? AT2 is another one. So it's like, I don't know if you can sit and say that a particular space is a black space on YouTube, and this is a much larger sector I just talked about, which is the tea, beef sector. When you talk about these spaces, you can't really say that these spaces are for white people or for black people. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because ultimately speaking, people are going to talk about what they want, and whatever audience that gravitates to them is what happens and what gravitates to them. This quote unquote sector is so small because this group of people have chosen to remain hanging with each other in different chats and go into different spaces, laughing and joking, having a good time, roasting each other, and all types of shit. Okay? We have chosen to do that. But at the same time, I don't know if I can easily and comfortably say, without explaining why it would be conducive to call it a black space. I don't know if I could comfortably say that, because this has not really been a space that has been positive towards black people. There really hasn't been much building in this space. There really hasn't been, when you talk about it, and when you talk about it as a whole. And actually there tends to be this feeling of you having to be the toughest kid on the block or the biggest fighter on the block in this sector. That's literally the interpretation that I get from this sector. I don't get that this is a black space. Like, I can go to other content creators and go to their actual channel and say, yeah, this is a space where, black issues are put forth way before, anyone else. Or this is a space where they put black issues first. But I can't, and then I can say this would be a safe space to discuss black, issues or so forth. But I can't say this sector as a whole is like that. I mean, I'm sorry. Maybe you guys have a different interpretation of that. But for me, that is my interpretation of this. I can't say that this sector itself in a whole is actually a black space, because again, this space has not been a space where we're finding solutions, where we're building and we're talking, talking value and talking about stuff that's really of importance to the black communities as a whole. Do you understand what I'm saying? So is this a black space? I don't know. You guys leave it up for interpretation. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think and what is up. Sometimes I appreciate you being in the building. And what's up, Shakem? So I am going to get out of here because I actually got to sign into work at 10. But I just wanted to let you guys know that. And that was my interpretation of this. I do understand the conversation in regards to the disrespect of black people and how we take that. But again, I think that it's important to understand that we only have but so much control over things on the internet. We really can't control much of what people say or do. We do have control over our own channels, over our own chat rooms. And if, for instance, the content creator allows you to be a moderator in that chat room, then you can moderate correctly and make sure that people aren't trolling, so forth and so on. But other than that, we honestly don't have control over what people say or do. And that is clear to me from this sector alone. The fact that people have tended to say and do whatever they want to do is why people have, yes, become complacent with it, because there really literally is nothing you can do. You can't cancel a single person in this sector. You can't cancel a single person no matter what. Now, You can control what they do in your space. For instance, I will not allow Vagoda anywhere in my space. I don't care if he's in my chat. I don't care if he tries to come on a panel. It's just not happening. But I can go some other place and Vagoda's on the panel talking shit. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I don't have control over what that person does, but I have control over me. I have control over my space. Now, again, like if everybody decided to get all on the same page and we're all going to control our panels, we're all going to control our chat rooms the same way, then you could call that like a network and or so forth. And then, yeah, then there you go. Now you've got a space where you have created a space for people to come and people to set up shop and talk about Black issues and so forth and so on. But what I'm letting you know about that, and I'm just going to put this here, just put this on the table. If you decide to do that, okay, as such a small group of people, keep in mind how small this sector is compared to larger sectors, okay, compared to larger, spaces. If you take this small space and do that, you're now subjecting yourself only to this small space, okay, as opposed to opening up the door for larger spaces to want to come in and to enjoy your content. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like if you start closing off doors and saying, oh, we're not going to allow this and we are not going to allow that and we are not going to do this and that. Now you're closing off the door to other content creators and other sectors to come in and actually view your content. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's the point of coming on here. You know what I mean? You want to get a larger audience. Eventually, you want to get to the masses. You want to talk to more people. You don't want to just talk to the same 10 or 11 people all the time, or the same 20, 30 people all the time. Eventually, you want to start talking to a larger audience. So if you're closing the door and shutting off doors like that, you're now closing the door to that larger audience. So that's just something to think about, okay? And, again, I'm not saying anything that anybody has to do or move their channel a certain way. Absolutely not. But it's difficult for me to sit here and say that this is a Black space because, like I said, I don't think that this has been, even though I've said that. But I think what I meant in honesty is that Black people have tended to gravitate to this space. But that's the same thing with many spaces that I've seen on YouTube that have also been toxic, and many spaces on YouTube that have also been, helpful and so forth. I think it's a mixture of both. So, but, again, like I said, if you start shutting that stuff off, then you're shutting down the door to certain things. And I don't think that's a good idea. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. I truly appreciate you guys always tuning in and always supporting the show. I am going to get out of here so that I can start my day. And I will talk to you guys later. Peace, guys.
Let's make a home. We make a home. I don't want to go everywhere. I don't want to go everywhere. Let's make a home. We make a home. I don't want to go everywhere with me. Dollar maker, dollar maker.